Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Total Football Talk. As always, we're going to look at all the latest news coming out surrounding Manchester United in regards to transfers and all the latest news as well. And we're going to jump in. We're going to look at what's coming out, what's being said about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. That's going to be the top story we're going to look at. We're going to look at what's being said about Nkunku, Marcus Rashford, a little bit on Richard Rios, and we'll have a look at how Ruben Amorim is feeling after his first day back at Carrington, and the players are all due back tomorrow. So let's dive in and have a look at what's being said, who's talking what, and where are we with everything? Because Manchester United's news just keeps on flowing. So we'll start with the top story being Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But I'll just say, if you're enjoying the content and you're just joining in for the first time, you're finding us, brilliant. Thank you very much. Please hit the old like button. If you enjoy the content, hit the old subscribe button. Get your comments in below. I'd love to hear from you on anything that I talk about this morning. And we'll jump in with the Dominic Calvert-Lewin story. And this is where we are with it at the minute. Manchester United are making a move to sign the free agent Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And now, I don't know who the source is. I've not really heard of them before. There's been a few people kind of talking about this morning, that Dominic Calvert-Lewin's been linked with Manchester United. Now, I think this is due to a couple of things. I think this is due to the fact that Manchester United haven't signed a striker yet. The Gyökeres thing carries on. Manchester United are still being, linked with Osimhen. They're still being linked with Ollie Watkins. And I think that Dominic Calvert-Lewin it feels more like a story that the agent has just kind of latched onto and went, well, look, Manchester United are still looking for a striker. We need to, if we can latch onto that, maybe it'll generate some interest for our client. And maybe off the back of that, things will start moving for him. Because I just think, what are Manchester United doing if they go for Dominic Calvert-Lewin? His injury record is terrible. His goal record is worse than Rasmus Højlund last season. He has been available for Everton, I think, for a good portion of the second half of last season, but the lad has lost his way. He was a striker maybe a few years ago who could have and did well in the Premier League, but the injury record is shocking, and I don't believe he is. You don't need to rejuvenate a striker of his type. Now, if you're playing devil's advocate, and Ruben Amorim, he took Gyökeres from Coventry to Sporting and made him what he is now, one of the top strikers in European football. Is that something that maybe Manchester United and Ruben Amorim is going to be interested in? I don't think so. I don't think the club are interested. I don't think Ruben Amorim's interested. I just think this is agent-led, and I don't believe that Manchester United are going to do this deal. Now, if we get to the end of August and we feel that Manchester United and the club feel that they are struggling and we're on the market, I mean, God forbid we actually do the deal, but in the past, that's how we've operated. Now we're looking to operate different from the previous regime. They would have done that. I think they would have left it to the end of August, panic buy, brought him in on a free, but he's still going to look for absolutely astronomical wages because he is on a free. And I just think it'd be a ridiculous gamble. I don't even think it's one that we would entertain. I hope we don't. I hope we manage to do our business with Mbeumo, which we'll look at very soon, and move on to the striker target and get in someone that we actually want, rather than someone who's just being kind of thrown around at the tail end of the transfer window, and out of sheer desperation we dive in for. So that's where we are with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So as I said, I don't think it's a story that there's anything in it at the minute, but it is doing the rounds that Manchester United are interested and are looking. So we'll see what happens, but I just can't buy into that one. Now, talking about Bryan Mbeumo, it says this has come from Graham Bailey that Bryan Mbeumo to Manchester United could be finalised by the end of Monday. And Mbeumo has made it clear he does not want to return to Brentford. So Bryan Mbeumo has made it clear that he doesn't want to return back to pre-season training at Brentford, and that he wants the deal finished and across the line so he can join Manchester United next week. Now, I'd love to know what you good people think in there about, first of all, Calvert-Lewin. Do you think Calvert-Lewin would actually be a good striker for Manchester United to come in? Do you think it's a complete waste of time? Do you think it's, Manchester United are agent-led? Get your thoughts in below. I'd love to hear what you think. But on the Bryan Mbeumo thing, excuse me, Graham Bailey has very hit and miss with a lot of news around Manchester United. So for this deal to be done by the end of Monday, I don't know. I can't see it being finished and finalised by the end of Monday. I just think there's probably still too much to do. If we got a here we go at the end of Monday, I'd be absolutely delighted. But I've got a funny feeling this is going to drag on for another few days, if not the rest of the week. And maybe the tail end of next week, if we're lucky, Manchester United could be able to strike a deal. As long as he... even if he misses the first couple of days of pre-season, which is not great, but understandable to a point, I think as long as he's on that plane, we need to get him on the plane before we head off to America, and that's going to be taken off. So we have massively failed in this particular transfer market because we needed to get at least 2 players in. We haven't sold anyone yet. There's a lot of talk about Sancho to Juventus and Anthony to Real Betis, but not as strong as these links are to these players. None of them have actually gone yet. So yeah, I think we need to get this deal done. I hope it is by Monday, but I've got a funny feeling it's going to drag on towards the tail end of the week. Now there is another story doing the rounds that Manchester United have been sort of quoted 35 million by Chelsea to sign Christopher Nkunku. Now obviously Nkunku is another a striker / forward that we were interested in years ago. We know that Chelsea are desperate to get him off the wage bill. Look at all the players Chelsea have signed. They've signed a lot of forwards, and they're still looking at forwards. They're still looking at Garnacho apparently. So they're desperate to get Nkunku off their books. Now I think maybe there's a slight opportunity in this one, and maybe it's a case of we take him alone with an option, and we get a little bit of retribution for what they did with the Jadon Sancho deal. We maybe take him for a year because his track record with injuries is absolutely shocking. So I don't, he's probably coming on decent wages too. So 35 million. I hope we just laugh in the face of that because it's ridiculous. We're not going to pay that. I don't think anyone's going to pay that. As I said, he's a very good player. I just think he's someone else who needs to be rejuvenated, revitalized. And I don't want Manchester United to be that club that is a club that just rejuvenates and revitalizes careers. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Christopher Nkunku, all these players that are, somewhere on the they're kind of going backwards at the minute. And yeah, but maybe if you brought him in on a loan deal, it could be quite interesting. And yeah, might be something worth looking at. But get you good people and get your thoughts in. What do you think? Christopher Nkunku to Manchester United? Yes, no, maybe. As a loan option, would you pay the 35 million for him? Do you think he's worth? I think I'm missing something here. Maybe I'm not on the right track. I could have easily kind of had a bit of an oversight on this one, but yeah, I'd love to know what you people think about that one. And then moving on to this is kind of in the striker situation, but in terms of Rashford, apparently Barcelona and Manchester United are expected to open talks in the coming days regarding Marcus Rashford. The English left winger is highly motivated to join the Catalan club and is willing to make significant efforts to make this happen. Now, we know that Rashford has kind of come out recently and said that, it's a dream move to Barcelona and he'd love for that to take place. We know on his social media that he's taken Manchester United off his social media. So, there's clearly a breakdown that has never been, fixed between Marcus Rashford and Ruben Amorim. I can imagine Marcus Rashford doesn't really want to return to Manchester United. Ruben Amorim definitely doesn't want him there. And Barcelona are potentially in now. In the Club World Cup last night, in slightly different news, but kind of leads on to this. Musiala got a really bad injury, ankle injury. So we know that Bayern Munich were already in the window looking for a left-sided player. Now, obviously, Musiala kind of plays in the 10. Marcus Rashford, but they've just lost him. And how long for, I don't know, but it looked like a really bad injury. So if they were already in the market before they lost Musiala, maybe they're back looking at someone who can kind of come and do a job for Musiala. Maybe Manchester United can get an obligation to buy with Bayern Munich. Maybe they take him for a season and he goes there and they cover the wages. Maybe they buy him for 30 million next year. But I just think, as I said before, Marcus Rashford's going to want to play in the World Cup. He's going to want to get the opportunity to go out there and, it's going to be a brilliant PR opportunity in the States next year. I don't think a lot of players are going to want to miss out on that, Marcus Rashford included. I think Marcus Rashford's going to want to find a way to make this work. So if Barcelona doesn't work, I think there's a big opportunity at Bayern Munich, and I think he would fit in well there. As I've mentioned before, he would, he's got Harry Kane out there already, could fit in nicely. Big club, going to win things, going to play in the Champions League. Ticks a lot of boxes, and I think that could be a potentially good move for him if Barcelona doesn't work out for one reason or another, probably because of the fact that they maybe can't afford his wages. So I think that's where Manchester United should be, kind of looking at the minutes. Now, that's the striker situation. Now, there was, again, we talked about Richard Rios, and apparently Manchester United are tracking Rios at every Palmeiras match, including the ones at the Club World Cup. He's admired by Wilcox and Vivel, and he's, cheaper maybe than Edison, coming in at 20 to 25 million euro. But as I said yesterday, I actually feel that he's probably going to cost a bit more because they, ascertained a lot of extra money through playing in the Club World Cup. So maybe they don't have to sell. Maybe they won't be as desperate to sell like previous Brazilian clubs in the past. I don't know if this is going to be a mover. Even if we are interested, he's a good ball carrying 8, but is he someone who can play alongside Bruno in the midfield? I don't know, because Bruno doing all the donkey work in defence, in the defensive position, doesn't really work. So it'd be interesting to see if we did go from where he would fit in. Excellent player, obviously gathering a lot of kudos, especially in the Club World Cup, where he's done very well. I remember Manchester United wanted to take a closer look at how he did against European teams, and he's fared out pretty well in that respect. So I think that's where we are with everything at the minute, and the final report is kind of something we already knew. Ruben Amorim returned to Carrington yesterday, reportedly frustrated by the lack of squad activity over the last 6 weeks, with minimal progress on both sides, signings and departures. Excuse me, guys. He cited a lack of, he says a lack of backing, especially in light of Manchester United's dismal campaign. What do you think about it? This is Ruben Amorim's first proper transfer window. Manchester United have made moves of sorts. They brought in Cunha, but they failed everywhere else. They failed to bring in Mbeumo. They failed to sell players, despite we knowing that some players could potentially move on. And Ruben Amorim's very frustrated. Don't blame him, because if he doesn't, I've said before and I'll say it again, if he doesn't get the players he needs before we head off to the stage, which he's probably not going to get, and he doesn't get a full preseason with at least 4 or 5 new players, next season is going to be a grind, absolute grind, and he could struggle straight away. And we know what the knives will be out, media, fans, online base. It's going to be a difficult time for him, and the board have to back him. This is his first proper transfer window. They backed every other manager. Back your manager. Bring in the players he needs. Give him half a chance. He can't be fighting with 2 hands behind his back, because he's absolutely knocked out. So I hope this all changes very, very quickly. Okay, guys, that's your roundup of all the latest news coming out of Old Trafford at the minute. As I said, if you're enjoying the content, please hit the old like button. Please hit the old subscribe button. Get your comments in below on anything I've talked about. And we shall do it all again tomorrow.